Who are you? What is your identity? What are the qualities that make you who you are? Is it your name? Is it your gender? Is it your age? Is it where you were born, your ethnicity, the language you speak? Is it your religion? When we're born, we are recognized and labeled by where we're born and how we appear. This includes the sizes and shapes of our body, the color of our skin, our eyes, and hair. It also includes our assumed gender. Many of those labels we received at birth are assigned to us by others or by the constructs of our society. But we are so much more than that. Humanity evolved from clans, and there's a part of our brain, our reptilian brain, our primal mind, that never completely moves out of that tribal mindset. And through humanity's early evolution, what was or who was not like us was deemed a threat. If a person looked different, had different features, different skin color or eye color, spoke a different language, they were immediately deemed dangerous, a threat to our territory, our possessions, or our lives. To survive, humans needed to stick with their own kind. But is that still so? People find comfort with being with others who are like them. We all do. When I have an opportunity to get together with a group of other Armenians, hear my language, eat and smell our foods, it takes me to that familiar place of childhood and it warms my heart. When I have a chance to hang out with other lesbians, that's home for me as well. There's a commonality. I feel the same when I get together with my inward friends that I've shared my whole life with and had the experience of growing up in the same neighborhood. And I love being with my UU family and others on the spiritual path like all of you, because we have such commonality in our liberal religion, our questioning minds, and in our compassionate hearts. This UUCP community has become home to me. It makes sense that people are most comfortable with others who are like them, like this congregation. We have an experience of commonality that feels good to all of us. But here we are in 2022. Humanity has reached a point that we live in a global society. Our food is globally sourced. Foods are manufactured and shipped globally. So is our fuel. And our technology is shared globally, along with our internet. We're globally fighting COVID, at least some of us are. And we inhabit a world that's completely interconnected. And we need to work together globally for the survival of this planet. And with that, we need to connect to those who are different than us to survive. Whether that need is as global patriots advocating for our planet's ecological survival, or as Americans struggling through a difficult and pivotal time of profound separation. How do we train ourselves to develop an experience of commonality and comfort with those we don't have something in common with? It's interesting that all major religions ask one question. How do you treat your neighbor? A neighbor who may not be like you. Along with that question, they give a directive. And depending on the religion or tradition, it's worded differently, but it ultimately always means the same thing. Do not do to your neighbor what you do not want done to yourself. This is often referred to as the Golden Rule, and it's the same directive in Confucianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, you name it, it's all the same. Don't do to someone else what you don't want done to yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. If there is a God, she certainly went out of her way to make sure everybody, no matter where you reside on earth, was given this same golden rule in the language that they would understand. The golden rule is easy to follow if you get along with your neighbor. If your neighbor's not too different from you, it's easy to love the lovable. It's when that neighbor or that other human being falls into the other category, the other tribe, the other team, the other one, the other political sign on their lawn. It's then we might think or behave in that tribal way. That's when the reptilian brain kicks in and we may deem someone as the enemy, and we fall into the us and them thinking. When I was coming of age, many Americans were raised to believe in their president without a question, without questioning at all. I know I was raised in that capacity. We were an immigrant family, and our parents were Republicans. Much of their language and their experience was centered around their transition to moving to America and becoming U.S. citizens. I actually still have the book here. I'll show you later. Oh, no, I could show you right now. Here is the book that they read and studied. It was written in about 1915. That's Armenian English to Become Citizens. In 1963, when I was 7, I chose for my Halloween costume to be President Kennedy, JFK. I just adored JFK. I had a little dark suit. I had a JFK mask. I attended our Armenian church Halloween party with my friend Patty on my arm as my wife Jackie. And I would keep saying to people repeatedly, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. I have a photo of Patty and I in our costumes. I'll show you after the service. So as Republicans and newly American, my parents, our parents, Lionel's on here with me, they wouldn't possibly consider not listening to whoever their president was. It was unthinkable to them. And many people still listen to their leader without questioning, though these days it does tend to be led and connected to their political affirmation. There are many ways minds can be controlled. There always have been ways that minds and people have been controlled. Religions, politics, ethnic groups, neighborhoods, sports teams, fraternities. Let's just to name a few. They could all be cult-like. Here's a few examples. Many observant people from religions throughout this planet would never walk into another house of worship because they'd be terrified of what would happen to them. They'd be sure to be damned somehow, either by their assumed God or their community. In the neighborhood where Lionel and I grew up, there was a lot of separation. It was everywhere. Aside from the racial and ethnic divisions, there were divisions from block to block and schoolyard to schoolyard. Enough to create violence based on the street you hung out in. And it wasn't just mild violence. Some of it was very extreme. I remember getting up with my friend Carol one morning and just examining the pools of blood in the street and following the drops to where we believed the fights had occurred the night before. There were stabbings, there were beatings. And it wasn't even different religions or skin color. Everybody felt in the same group, but the separation was street to street. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Much of the news media profits from fear. If you're like me, you may feel that every time you see a breaking news banner across your screen, you may feel that alarm kind of go off in you, right? It could be for a snowstorm, but most of the time it's about politics. It's, and if you're watching a liberal channel, like I would, you'll find yourself afraid of the conservatives. If you're watching a conservative news channel, they're getting the same bands coming across their screen, and they're all becoming more and more afraid of the liberals. Fear makes us move in a way that's not in the best interest of humanity as a whole. Fear is behind all violence, all violence. And it's that belief that someone or some group is different than us, and that we should be afraid of them. In the beginning of this sermon, I asked the questions, who are you? What is your identity? And I spoke a little bit about how these constructs are given to us and assigned to us. So is it a person's fault if they were raised or groomed to be part of a specific group? Is it their fault if they received information that might have created that illusion of separation? That might not be true. Fortunately, we had an open-minded father, and I know he had his imperfections and his prejudices that sometimes came up about gay, and that's fine. But he invited us into deeper conversations. For the most part, he stood on the side of love for just about everyone, and I think we are fortunate because of that, because if not for him, I don't know who I would have been or how I would think, because I wouldn't have had that impact of an inclusive, primarily inclusive and open-minded man and loving man. So I'd like us to consider how our open-mindedness, our ability to think in an inclusive way, which I believe many of us, or most of us here, are that, is a blessing. It is actually a privilege. Because in many cases, it's a privilege because we were exposed somehow or somewhere to people or situations that engaged us to think in and behave with inclusivity. In a world of such separation, those of us who are inclusive of all are actually fortunate. And I believe our job is to invite people out of that darkness of separation rather than condemn them, is invite them into the light. The great Dr. Martin Luther King wrote this about his life. He wrote, "As my sufferings mounted, I soon realized that there were two ways that I could respond to any situation, either to react with bitterness or seek to transform the suffering to a creative force. And I decided to follow the latter." If you view photos of Dr. King while he's under attack by police and these terrifying, ferocious dogs, and you examine the expression on his face, you will not see any hatred. It's just not there. He showed us the way. You can't shame one. You can't shame somebody into becoming open-hearted. You can't insult people into thinking differently. You can't hate somebody into agreeing with you. It doesn't work. Martin Luther King's work was to bridge that gap of human separation, to stop othering, seeing the other. And in his dream of the beloved community, there's room for everyone. Dr. Vivek Murthy asked this following question. He says, what can we do in our lives through the decisions we make, the choices we make, to tip the scales in the world away from fear towards love? Changing the perception of those we deem as other is the work of a Unitarian Universalist. It's the hard work, and it starts inside of us. It starts when we work to be aware that we are having that experience of other with people who are different than us, and shifting something within ourselves so that we change. Because when we change, others change. This just might be what standing on the side of love looks like. I'd like to close with a quote that really struck me that I received recently. And the author is unknown, and here it is. The way you alchemize a soulless world into a sacred world is by treating everyone as if they're sacred, until the sacred in them remembers. May we each find new and different ways to expand our hearts. May it be so. If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.